Roblox. What can I say about Roblox? It's a platform that seems to attract bad people with interesting ideas, if the amount of drama and exposure videos for it are anything to go by. Now, why am I talking about Roblox? Because that is where we'll find the subject of this video, a little game called Become Fumo. The way I would describe this game is that it's basically a hangout game with a variety of objects you can interact with and different areas to explore. One of the main draws of this game is being able to become a plush version of characters from a series called Touhou project. These plush characters are called Fumos, and they are recognizable by their iconic looking faces, hence the title of the game. You can tell this is a game that doesn't take itself very seriously at all, and it's just a very chill game to hang out in. If you had the right group of people, you could easily spend hours just enjoying the vibes and chatting to others. With all that considered, how could a cute game like this go wrong? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about today, and by the end of the video, I will show you just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Before we talk about the history of the game, I feel it's necessary to talk about two people in particular that worked on the game and play an integral part in future events. First, let's talk about the lead dev of Become Fumo, who, depending on the time period, goes by either Scario8 or Okuchi. I'm just going to be calling them Okuchi to keep things consistent throughout the video. Now, being the lead dev, he's surely got to be a logical individual that is capable of making rational decisions that will benefit their game, right? Well, it's complicated, as you'll see later on. Next person I want to talk about is Little Nazrin, who, despite the unassuming name, had a very big personality, to say the least. You'll be seeing why I say that pretty soon. Anyways, he was also a developer for the game who would end up owning the Discord server the game would use for the majority of its active life, so they had quite a lot of power. There are of course other people and developers that are important to talk about too. I just wanted to talk about these two now so I wouldn't have to later on. Anybody that I need to talk about, I will do so when they come up. So with all that stuff out of the way, we can now get to discussing the beginning of the game and the eventual drama that will ensue around it. To start off, let's go back to when Become Fumo was first created, back in January 2021. Back then, the game was in a pretty bare-bones state, but people didn't really mind. It was an exciting time as the Touhou community on Roblox had not seen anything like this game when it was created. The game quickly grew in popularity and got numerous frequent updates. Now, I don't know the exact details about this, but back then, there was a Discord server that wasn't directly associated with the game, but was still used to discuss it. The admins of this server consisted of Okuchi and people in their friend group at the time, and it remained that way until April of that year. Before I go on, I have to talk a little bit about some stuff on VR chat. Yeah, kinda random, I know, but it's important. So, remember Little Nazrin from earlier? Well, she had a group on VR chat called Nazrin's VR Closet. Why is that relevant? Well, at some point, Okuchi and Little Nazrin met and started to interact with one another. They must have become good friends pretty quickly because Okuchi ended up inviting Nazrin and some other people from the VR Closet to work on Become Fumo. Pretty soon after that, Okuchi's Discord server and Nazrin's VR Closet would essentially merge together and create a new Discord server that would end up being nicknamed Nazcord. A server that combined the communities of Roblox, a platform of mostly children, and VR chat, whose population mostly consisted of adults.
What could possibly go wrong?
People didn't know at the time, but this particular server would ultimately be one of the main factors that would lead to Become Fumo's downfall. For right now though, things were going great for a while. With the extra developers the game now had, it had gained lots of momentum, and there was plenty of new content to keep players happy. The Nazcord served as a place for the community to chat outside of the game. For several months, it seemed like nothing could stop it. But while things seemed to be good for the game itself, cracks were starting to show on the Nazcord server. Little Nazrin and some other admins on the server were starting to abuse the power they had. At first, it wasn't too bad, with them just being a bit ban-happy towards people and generally being kinda rude. But as you can expect, it got worse. I have to talk about somebody real quick to provide context for this upcoming stuff. The person in question goes by the name of Anx. Now, Anx wasn't just some random person. They were actually one of the developers for the game. It sounds like somebody that wouldn't really be a victim of some drama, right? Well, Turns out that they would get banned from the Nazcord towards the end of November and have all their assets for the game removed. Why would this happen so suddenly? The reason being is that they were accused of being a that was trying to date minors that were in the Nazcord server. A few admins from the server posted some proof that has since been deleted besides these thumbnails that were preserved, which are apparently different cherry-picked messages that Anx sent to people. There are also other posts made on Twitter by various people in the dev team about the situation, which made it seem much worse. So this all sounds pretty bad, but here's the thing. Anx did not actually do any of the stuff that was being claimed. How do I know this? Because according to Anx, they were visited by some detectives who found no evidence to prove these claims. Another thing that's interesting to note is that according to Anx, it wasn't Nazrin who'd sent the detective, but Akuchi. Yes, these people really went so far as to not only make false claims about one of their own developers, but also try to get him arrested for something they didn't even do. Really stand-up devs right there. Anyways, while we're still looking at messages from Anx, I'd like to bring attention to some more interesting things that they either said themselves or confirmed. There's a message here that claims that Okuchi had, at some point in the past, tried to date 2 different minors, which Anx confirms. We also learned from Anx some very interesting information about Akuchi and their relationship with Nazrin. So far, it seems to be a lot more than just being regular friends, to say the least. Oh wow, the dude that tries to get people arrested and calls them out for doing stuff with minors happens to be a weirdo that does the very same thing they're claiming and also simps for e-girls? I'm so shocked by this turn of events. Anyways, after seeing how all this played out, let it serve as a sign of things to come in the near future. So after this, things are relatively quiet drama-wise, up until late January 2022. The drama we've seen so far has only involved a few people at most. Well, that was about to change, and this upcoming incident will serve as the catalyst for Become Fumo's declining player base. I know I've done this several times already, but I need to explain some more stuff again, starting with a group that is known as Poolside. So, Poolside consists of a group of people that would hang out by this pool area that is in Become Fumo and chat to one another, and that's pretty much all they did for the most part. They ended up being pretty popular, as you could easily see at least a few dozen people by the pool during their peak. Now, we gotta talk about gimmick accounts real quick. Gimmick accounts are basically Roblox accounts that were made to do one specific thing and Become Fumo and nothing else. This can include a variety of things, but not limited to sitting in one spot of the map, saying different phrases constantly, using exploits to fly around and fling people, etc. And yes, you were allowed to use exploits in the game if you wanted to, so long as they weren't being used to constantly disrupt other players of the game. This all sounds pretty silly, but gimmick accounts were a common sight. Even today, you can still see some gimmick accounts on the game. With all that covered, we can finally talk about what happened. It all began when this one gimmick account, named Fried Rice Tsubakuara, got an item added into the game based on their gimmick. It was a pretty common occurrence back then for more dedicated gimmick accounts to get an item added that references them. Some people from Poolside had gotten upset that this gimmick account, that wasn't around for very long and was also quite annoying, got an item added into the game instead of them. So one of the longtime members of the group decided to take matters into their own hands and create a bot that would teleport to people every few seconds and ask them to give a flower. You would think something harmless like this wouldn't be a big deal, but of course, it was. Within a few hours, the bot and the creator of it were banned from the game, and then other Poolside members started getting banned. The banning got so bad that by the time the servers for the game restarted, all the Poolside people that were on had gotten banned. In a similar repeat of what happened to Anx, some bullshit tweets are posted by Akuchi and Nazrin talking about how they were in contact with law enforcement. There's also this Discord message from one of the admins of Nazcord where they show a screenshot of an out of context tweet made by one of the people from Poolside and try to make them seem like they're predators. We are also blessed with this very nice line in the patch notes for that day from Akuchi, talking about how Big Brother is watching. At least I can compliment their sense of humor, even if everything else sucks. There were also messages and announcements on the Nazcord that declared everyone from Poolside was a pet, and Nazrin made a tweet that is now deleted where they basically did the same shit of taking out of context messages they had gotten from somebody that was spying on Poolside to make him look bad. Yeah, they actually had people from Nazcord spying on their players. Are you really surprised at this point? By the time everything was said and done, the player base had been significantly reduced because of all the bans, and there was now a lot of friction between those in Poolside and the devs that would never really go away. From this point onward, Become Fumo would be on a downward spiral that it would never recover from. Besides the same bad Apple admins on the Discord server being unique, and the game receiving a few updates, there didn't seem to be anything noteworthy going on. After everything that had happened recently, things seemed too quiet. But then, on March 5th, 2022, when everybody least expected it, tragedy struck. A place where so many beloved memories were created, known as Nazcord, was no more. So yeah, sarcastic ASMR aside, Little Nazrin had finally had enough of the server that they had built up and pulled the plug on it, seemingly without warning. This is also the reason why all my images relating to Nazcord are Twitter posts, chats from various people that were on the server, and random images that people captured and saved before Nazcord was deleted. Because it just sort of doesn't exist anymore. The majority of stuff that was on Nazcord has been lost for good, and the community had lost their main place to talk about Become Fumo. So what happens to the game now? With the Nazcord gone, people were understandably confused and wanting to know what happened. They turned to Twitter and other platforms looking for answers, but all they ended up getting was radio silence from the devs. People did notice Little Nazrin seemed to want nothing to do with Become Fumo anymore, but besides that, there wasn't anything else to go off of. Eventually, on April 1st, after much anticipation, the people's prayers were answered, and they were finally granted a proper response from the lead dev, Akuchi. What exactly was this response? I'm sorry, what? Well, that's okay, because in Become Fumo, you can now touch grass. Wow, just wow. This was so worth the wait. Okay, but seriously, what the actual hell is this response? How do you manage to be this out of touch with your own player base? I mean, really, this has to be some kind of inside joke or something. It just blows my mind how they not only did not answer anything, but left everyone with more questions than they started with. That's quite an accomplishment. Well, after that response, to the surprise of probably nobody at this point, Akuchi went back to being silent and not posting anything for a little while. The silence would eventually be broken, but fans of Become Fumo would receive the worst news possible. On May 10th, it was officially confirmed through some tweets from Akuchi that Become Fumo would be ceasing development. Now, to be honest, most people already assumed that the game was done for when they noticed the devs not interacting with people after Nazcord died, and especially after that goofy-ass response in April. But now we had an official confirmation. People got to say their final goodbyes to the game, and they could finally move on. Except, not really, because Akuchi randomly started working on updates again with a few other devs that came back after Become Fumo was considered done. And to give them credit, they actually stuck around this time. They were posting on their Twitter constantly and releasing updates at a reasonably fast pace like they used to. They even went out of their way to unban the people that were part of Poolside, which is a nice gesture, but far too late at this point to matter much. With all this positive news for the game coming out at once, it seemed like the game had a chance to make a comeback after all the bad things it had experienced the past several months. As if, after releasing one last content update on December 11th, their Twitter would stop posting completely after that. Well, except for a single random repost of some Source filmmaker video in 2023. Not sure what that was about. But yeah, after the long journey Become Fumo has had, it's unfortunately gone out with a whimper. Between the bad blood from past drama, the lack of updates, and people simply getting bored and moving on, the game is practically a shell of its former glory nowadays, and it seems like there will be nothing to change that anytime soon, if ever. So you think that by now I would have exhausted every little bit of major history related to Become Fumo drama, and normally, you would have been correct. But in 2024, a few people from Become Fumo that were part of Akuchi's friend group shared their stories of what it was like to work on the game, and a couple of various things that went down behind the scenes. And I gotta say, even considering all the previous drama, some of the stuff might be the most eye-opening by far. I'll start with the more tame story first, which comes from somebody named Carrots. To make things easier for me, I'm going to let text-to-speech talk for these stories, and at the end of each section, I'll describe my thought. Sound good? Let's do this.
I met Oku back when BF came into fruition, which was January 2021. The game was shown to me over an Instagram story, and I took some interest in it, because I was getting more into Touhou at the time. I had taken notice that there was also a Discord server for the game, so I joined that to keep myself updated with where the game went. Oku was fairly active in his own server, popping into chats now and then, and even hosting a VC party with a bunch of server members. I have footage on an old drive that has since been eradicated. Everything was all pretty fine, and I got to know him a little better as he got to interact with his community very early on. It was the same until late March, early April 2021, which is when he decided to merge servers with Naz's own Virchit server. A weird combo to put together. Roblox and Virchit. Zoro already explained why that came to being made though, so I digress. I didn't think much of it, more than so as just an opportunity to get to know more people who liked the same things I did. I did find it a little weird that I was surrounded by people who were a lot other than me, though. I was 14 at the time. Most of the people there were in their 20s. As 2021 continued, so did the updates for BF, and my own friendships with the people I met in Nazcord. I am responsible for that name being made, blame me, and I got to meet cool people, who I still talk to this day, like Zoro, Kiwi, Devi, Denver, Mages, etc. Nazcord was a really nice place for me to just talk about the things I liked. Later in the year, December 2021, I did notice that things did grow a little sour between me and some of the people who were very involved in the game, specifically both Oku and Naz. Back in April, I had first met Naz over Funky Friday, a game that took my own interest, as I had started getting into rhythm games. Just a month prior in March 2021, Naz saw that I had interest in the game, and asked if I wanted to go against her, and I agreed.
Okay, so not much new info here, but we still got a few things. Carrots has pretty much confirmed the time period of a few things, such as the server merge, and when the admin started to go sour on the server. They also talk about competing with Nazrin, which I'm curious to hear about. The most important of all, they are the one who came up with the Nazcord name. Some incredible lore right there. Let's see what they say next.
We 1v1'd a bit, and she lost every single time towards me. I didn't think much of it, but this apparently shattered her massive ego, and went on a stupid tangent about how I shouldn't be as good as I was for only playing rhythm games for like 2 weeks, and how her 16 years of rhythm game experience should default her to winning every time against me. That started a year-long competition that was very one-sided, and she treated me differently from a lot of the people in Nazcord just because I won against her on a stupid Roblox game. Her rudeness towards me also caused a domino effect that reflected onto Oku, who later in the year also decided to give me the cold shoulder because of how Naz was treating me. I noticed that both of them just kind of ignored me when I was in big VCs and text channels, opting to just talk to other people. I didn't think too much of it, and defaulted to thinking it was probably just because I was a lot younger than both of them, so they had other things to worry about online. I tried to better my relationship with both of them by keeping quiet in VCs and just talking whenever I was permitted to say something relevant. I tried keeping up with them, and the other Nazcord members in Roblox events, etc. I ended up getting ignored most of the time, and decided I had had enough, going to people like Zoro to talk about how I really felt. Wish I could say what, but the account I did that on is gone, so well. Talking to him made me realize I was more than both of them, and I kept doing my own thing even with how differently I was treated. Come early 2022 and I find Naz streaming Nodig in a VC with Oku, and I decide to join. Muted. I made one stray comment about how the ranking system worked in the game, calling it weird for an S rank to have the equivalent to 90% accuracy, and for whatever reason, that made Naz like super pissed at me. I tried to act in a way to make her calm down, telling her that I was weird for thinking it was weird, but it seemed to calm her down, and she just went on with the reason of her night. Still bothered by my comment, Oku came later to me asking me to apologize to her, as she had been thinking that I had been growing in attitude, and had been being compared to people who don't get invited to physical sessions for DDR, whatever that means. so I just decided to apologize to her to get it over with. But what she said didn't help either of us at all. I have provided screenshots to show what I mean.
So, Nazrin is not only a loser, but a sore loser. Can't say I'm surprised there, but at least it was funny hearing them get destroyed with their 16 years of rhythm game experience. I also can't say I'm surprised about Akuchi acting cold when their queen was getting humiliated at a children's rhythm game. Jeez though, it really is kind of sickening to know just how manipulative these two are. I'm glad that most of the people in the server were nice to each other. I know I've been kind of treating Nazcord like a joke, but it really is a shame that it was slowly being ruined by a couple of shitty people. Okay, let's move on to the last story we have here. This story comes from Zoro, who was mentioned a few times during Carrot's story. And folks, I'm not spoiling anything, but if you thought Akuchi couldn't look any worse than they already do, you're about to be proven very wrong. Let's dive right in.
This is probably what most people are curious about. When is Become Fumo getting updated? When's the snow going away? When are we getting Anx? The short answer is never, the explanation being, Okuomi quit on Become Fumo after the incident with Nez, which a lot of people already know. But somewhere along the line, he recruited a lot of us in his friend group to help him work on the game when he decided to come back. This led to stuff like the Forest of Magic, Former Hell, Snow Town, etc. Things went fine for a while, but he eventually had other stuff going on, new projects, other things, etc. We were fine with him slowing down on development because we could work on stuff in his place. So, we did. He told us he'd add the stuff we made so long as we compiled it together and gave it to him. We had Fumos, buildings, new areas in the works, but he never added them. We eventually just gave up hope. Most stuff was left unfinished since we knew it wouldn't get added anyways. Another thing is, none of the devs have ever been paid for our work. In his defense, we were never promised payment, and we also just enjoy working on the game as a whole, but we can't publish anything without him. The real issue is, a lot of us are also uncredited for our work. This was something we addressed with him, so he told us to write up an updated credits GUI for him. I took the liberty of doing that. It's been pinned in the dev server since December 18, 2022. What would take him less than a minute to do, he still hasn't done to this day. This is something less related, but was revealed to me by an anonymous whistleblower. Nowadays, the only times he would hop on his Okwechi account, he has multiple accounts, he uses these to hide away from all his problems, would be to collect the Robux he gets from people playing Become Fumo. I figured he would Devix most of it, but I was told he was just giving out Robux to random women he'd meet at On Tap, the bar game.
And who's that? Oh, it's Mr. MVP! Sim!
Sorry about that, but the joke was just too tempting. For real though, how down bad is bro? Did Nazrin leaving break Akuchi this much, or were they always like this? Well, anyways, moving on from that, we also learned just how lazy they really were. I mean, come on now, is it really so much effort to upload stuff that your dev team makes for you? How the hell is updating a list of credits something you can't do in like 5 minutes? This is only the first part and I'm already getting this annoyed at them. I think it's about time to see if it gets worse.
So, other than development for Become Fumo, we were his friends too. After the incident with Nez, he was fine for a while. We would just play games and have fun when we weren't working on things, it was all good times. But he inevitably reverted to his old ways when we met to people, who I'll just call Psyche and Bree. Psyche and Bree were a couple that clearly had issues. For some reason, they were brought into our friend group on a whim I don't remember why. Oku latched onto Bree, or maybe it's better to say they latched onto each other. Bree ended up breaking up with Psyche, and the two of them got together within days. This was uncomfortable to a lot of us. Bree would join our VCs and was very loud and obnoxious. It got to the point that all of us started spending our time elsewhere while the two would just sit in VC together in our friend group server. Their relationship lasted between 2 and 3 months. When he finally realized how unhappy we were, we talked things out, we returned, and he was fine again. After a few months, Oku started growing distant from a lot of us. He had gotten a job, so this was understandable, but he started to feel intentionally distant. He had a lot of free time on his hands even so, and he spent it away from us. At this point, most of us were clueless about what was going on. But we found out thanks to the anonymous whistleblower that he had simply made another server and left a lot of us behind. He still hasn't confronted me directly to tell me why, simply opting to tell everybody but me instead. I found out he was making fun of me behind my back too, although at that point, I hadn't any reason to care. Nowadays, he's found himself another e-girl girlfriend on Roblox and immediately jumped into a relationship with her. We don't know anything about her because he tried to keep it hidden and failed.
Of course it gets worse. I don't even know what to say at this point. This guy went out of their way to try and get together with a girl on fucking Roblox, of all places, who also was already in a relationship with somebody else. And then after they got together, they focused entirely on her instead of the friend group that he's known for years at this point, and completely ignored how uncomfortable they were. Then, even after things were fine again, this dumbass who probably has the IQ of an actual moth abandoned their friend group for another server and went right back to simping. Then again, this is also the guy that will come back to the Game Rambley just for a VTuber and say that they're trying despite not doing anything with the game, so what do I expect? Good lord, I legitimately feel so bad for their friend group. They did not deserve any of this stuff. And even after all that, we still have 2 more parts to look at. Let's get this over with.
As some are aware, Kiwi was one of the bigger devs due to his ability to do quite a bit. He could model Fumos, make really impressive builds, animations, etc., among other things. Kiwi looked up to Oku, and Oku responded to that by keeping his volume at less than 10% for most times he was in VC. I know this because Oku has been to my house once, and I watched him do this from my computer when I was in a VC with him in my room. Further on that, after he had abandoned most of us, he reached back out to Kiwi on a whim. This was surprising to him. But as it turns out, this was only because he wanted to use Kiwi's UGC perms to upload stuff to the catalog for his new friends. He did this through a group, Dark Roast Workshop. After a while, he did pay Kiwi some money for his effort, but he also promised he'd turn the group over to him. He never ended up doing this. Kiwi privated all the accessories that were uploaded in Oku's stead and spoke up about him in the group. Oku still hasn't responded because he's moved on to another new account already, both on Roblox and Discord. From a more personal viewpoint, I thought Oku and I were really close. I've known him longer than Become Fumo's been alive. We didn't really have much of a friendship until it came about, though. I've met up with him a few times in person about 4 times now, and it was always a fun time. My first time seeing him was for my 21st birthday. I went to visit him. At this time, Nez and Ari also came to visit, but I realized later on that Nez was just using my birthday as an occasion to visit with him, because the two met up a lot in the period where she had any relevancy. I was absurdly surprised when he decided to turn his back on me instead of just talking to me and telling me what I was apparently doing wrong. You can't fix what you don't know is wrong. This was around January-February 2023 when he started to grow distant. He would only talk to me once every few months. Nowadays, he doesn't talk to me. Oddly enough, he hasn't unfriended much people on either Roblox or Discord, but we all know that he's just hiding on another new account, since this is a behavior of his.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at this Dark Rose Workshop group real quick. We can see a dumb shout from Kuchi's alt claiming that they're on break. Yeah, buddy, the community of Become Fumo is very aware of your break. We can also see the comment Kiwi left about them. And here's a look at their alt profile. Some airhead? Oh, I think you're a lot worse than some airhead, my guy. To think that this is just one of their possibly many alt accounts, I just don't understand why they would choose to do the worst things possible and run away from their friends. I don't even want to talk about the other stuff that was mentioned because you already know how I would feel about that. And so, finally, we reach the last part of the story. What horrors will I hear about this time?
So, what was the Nez drama like from an insider's perspective? Let me break it down like this. Little Inezrin and her GF Aristillari were cosplayers that met Oku about 2 months after Become Fumo had been first developed, around March of 2021. The two had been together for 2 years at this point. I don't know what goes on in Naz's head, but for some reason she decided to latch onto Oku and took over development of Become Fumo. When she wanted something, he'd add it. This eventually led to the Nazrin's Closet server becoming the official Become Fumo server, for whatever reason. Oku and Nez would hang out in Virchat a lot. Almost every night, I remember seeing the message of both of them hopping on. It's not very hard to guess what they were talking about, doing, so I won't go into detail. There were periods of time where he wasn't available to play games because he was apparently at Nez's apartment. I always thought this was kinda weird, but I said nothing because I wasn't really relevant at this point in time. I was just a person he met before become Fumo who decided to stick around. So, after we did become better friends, I teased the idea of meeting up with him, and he was fine with it. I paid for my ticket and flew out to him. I'm not disclosing his location, so don't ask, because it was the perfect occasion. I was turning 21. I was informed beforehand that both Nez and Ari were coming to visit as well, to celebrate my birthday too. To put it simply, after Nez arrived, most of his attention went to her instead. Still, I carried on, because at this point we weren't aware that Nez was basically just using him. I decided to meet up again for New Year's that year, because I wanted to hang out with him again. I managed to join in a big meetup for a New Year's party they were all having. This time, I flew directly to Colorado. I don't care about disclosing where Nez lives. She's a nobody to hang out with him. I had to stay at a hotel with somebody else while he slept at their apartment free of charge. It was also around this time that I learned that Ari was planning to propose to Nez. For Oku, this was a very distressing time because he had spent most of that year simping for Nez. We all road tripped out to some resort place and stayed in a cabin on the night that Ari planned to propose. This is gonna sound kinda weird here, but I remember letting him lay his head on my lap when she did simply because I could tell the poor guy was upset and didn't want to cry in front of everybody. I let him because a homie's gotta be there for a homie when he's down. The cabin we stayed at, we had like 10 people. BTW didn't have enough beds to accommodate everybody, so he was going to sleep by himself on a couch downstairs. I stayed downstairs and we talked for a good 2 hours about everything before I fell asleep on that very uncomfortable chair. The rest of the trip was fine. When I went home a few days later, he was still down, but he seemed okay. Then, when he finally accepted that all hope was lost, he finally gave up and tried to get rid of Nez. This set her off like you wouldn't believe. She tried every method you could think of to try and get him to stay. She promised she would give Nazcord to him. This was a lie. You all know what happened, before eventually just making threats at him and deleting the server entirely. I haven't heard anything from her personally since then, but we've kept watch over her, and it didn't take her very long to find a new person to simp for her. Not no. I haven't bothered to keep up with her, because I frankly don't care. After Nazcord was deleted, this was where Oku decided to make a new account on both Discord and Roblox. He left everyone but me and a few others behind. I was the one responsible for bringing our old group back together: Denver, Davey, Carrots, Mages, Kiwi, etc., and we had good times from there.
So that's how it really ends, huh? With Coochie being the king of simps until the very end, and learning the real reason why the Nazcord was deleted. I wish I could say I was surprised, but after seeing all the previous red flags, I'm more disappointed than anything. I really don't even know what to say anymore, so I'm just gonna stop here. Whew. What a journey and a half this has been, and now you know what lies in this rabbit hole. But please stick around just a bit more. This is the end of the actual drama stuff, but there's still a few things I want to say. I want to answer a few questions that people might have after seeing all this. Starting with, how did you discover all this drama and where did you get your information from? To answer this, I knew a little bit about the drama from bits and pieces I saw on Twitter back when Become Fumo was still active. But where I really found out how to get the information for it was actually through a game called Better Discovery. It's basically a game that serves to function as a better version of the Roblox Discovery. And no, I will not call it charts, that's a stupid name. One of the features of that game allows people to make reviews about different games on the platform. I saw Become Fumo on there, and when I checked the reviews, I saw several of them calling Akuchi various, fun things. I eventually stumbled on a review that said to go to the Become Fumo Cam Discord to find out more about the drama. Without this Discord server, this video would not have been possible. There's plenty of other small pieces of information on there too that I didn't use in the video if you really want to learn about every single thing that went down on places such as Nazcord. The community on the server is super nice, and it serves as a good place to talk about a variety of different things besides just Fumo related stuff. I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested in any of this. I also want to go ahead and shout out Scuffed Become Fumo, which was made by a mix of old devs from Become Fumo, ones that aren't degenerates, and completely new ones. There's much more stuff that you can interact with than Become Fumo does, and is still actively updated to this day. Seriously, I can't stress enough how much content there is on the game. I've had gameplay of this game running in the background for most of the video, and it feels like I only scratched the surface. Please go support it, it can really use more players. Okay, now let's go over another big question people might be asking. Why do you care so much about this drama if most of it happened more than 2 years ago? Which, yeah, fair enough. I should explain why I'm so invested in it. This might come as a shock, but the reason I care so much is because it involves somebody who, at one point, I considered my friend. The person I'm talking about is Akuchi, the very same guy I spent a large portion of the video dumpstering on. Before all this stuff happened, they were somebody that I thought was really cool since we shared a lot of similar interests. I didn't know them anywhere near as long as the friend group they had during the time they worked on Become Fumo, or their other friends before that, but they were still somebody that I grew to care about a lot in the short time I knew them. Back then, I was going through some tough times, and having somebody like them, who was into the same nerdy stuff I was, helped make me feel better. We did the typical stuff that online friends would do, like share dumb images, play games together, and talk about whatever came to mind. Things were pretty good between us for a while, but eventually they gradually started doing less stuff with me and became less responsive. Now, to be fair, I was quite a moody person back then. I would get sad sometimes, especially when I thought I was being left out of stuff, and I often would make that very apparent in our chats when I was down. I also got pretty annoyed at them a few times when we played games together, which they likely did not enjoy. After some time, I guess they got tired of this and just stopped talking to me altogether. I tried multiple times to communicate with them, both by trying to chat with them and sending them videos like I usually did, but they never responded to me. This hurt me quite a bit, and I made the decision to do the same thing that they were doing and not interact with them. They never did put in the effort to communicate to me again, and a little later on, they would go on to make Become Fumo and establish a whole new friend group. They eventually removed me on stuff like Steam and Roblox too, but not Discord for some reason. This might sound petty of me, but I held a grudge toward Akuchi for several years that I kept in the back of my mind. I had long gotten over the pain of the situation, but after recently learning about how they treated their new friends and abandoned them, I was pretty angry. They were doing the same thing to others that I dealt with long ago, and I wanted to find some way to get back at this fucking asshole of a guy that several others and I had considered a friend. This video is my response. It not only serves as a way to deal with the feelings I have over this whole situation, but I also want it to serve as a way of revealing exactly what twisted things that he did either himself or allowed others to get away with. Sadly, even today, it seems that they're still making the same mistakes that they did years ago and continue to hurt others. I have one final message I want to say to Akuchi. On the slim chance you're out there watching this, I want you to know that despite everything you've done, there's still a chance for you to do the right thing. You can't take back all the things that you've done or the hurt that you've caused others, but you can try to do better from here on out. At the very least, you could apologize to your friends and give them some much needed closure. I don't know what your personal life is like or understand why you abandon others so easily, but even still, I care about you at least a little bit. Hell, I made this whole ass video about your silly plush game that shouldn't even matter anymore, so there must be some truth to that. The funny thing is, even after all of this, I would still be willing to be your friend again, if only you would get your head out your ass and get some help to fix all your damn issues. Finally, it should go without saying, but please don't go out of your way to harass any of the people you've seen in this video. They've long since moved on from Become Fumo, and most of the admins that were involved with stuff such as banning people unfairly have since apologized for their actions. This video is designed to simply be informative and entertaining. Nothing more, nothing less. Anyways, I've said everything that was on my mind now. Thank you everybody that stayed until the end, and I wish you all a good day. Goodbye for now.